Here I am at the mausoleum complex of the Emperor Tu Duc near Hue in central Vietnam. These gentlemen have been guarding it for 125 years. I'm on my way to the mausoleum's gate. It's covered in scaffolding. The magnificent building is being restored by a German-Vietnamese team led by Andrea Teufel. The project is financed by the German Foreign Ministry.
Hallo. Hi. Schön. Das ist es also. Genau, das ist es.
To get a good look, I have to climb the scaffolding. Not my favorite pastime, I'll admit. This complex of historic buildings has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1993. The binational team of restorers is using the latest scientific methods to restore and preserve this important site. Andrea Teufel, her senior restorer, Dirk Böhme, and their team begin by cleaning decades' worth of grime off the building. Andrea explains how, before they started, everything here was covered in a thick black layer of algae, mold, and fungi. So thick it looked like tar. The pavilion next to it gives an idea of what it was like. Andrea shows me where the original lime mortar was washed away from between the stones, leaving a crust of lime up to a centimeter thick in places. The team has finished cleaning these surfaces, but just as I'm about to ask to see some of the restorers at work, Andrea tells me it's time for the whole team to stop for lunch.
Jetzt ist Mittagspause. Mittagspause, Mittagspause. Wir haben Hunger.
Every day, just before 12, everyone heads for the Works Kantine, an outdoor cook shop typical all over Asia.
Okay,
And what's for lunch? Cơm deer, a typical lunch dish in Vietnam, made from fresh ingredients. Some so fresh they were strutting around the site just hours before. After a delicious meal, Andrea and I enjoy a coffee sweetened with cane sugar juice, and Andrea tells me more about her work. She says the biggest problem has been the lack of restorers in Vietnam. She tells me she and the German members of the team have a twofold job to do: training local restorers and restoring the complex as they show their colleagues the necessary techniques.
Nebenbei werden die Projekte quasi restauriert. Und das ist unser Konzept.
Vietnam has now become almost a second home for Andrea. Dirk tells me he and the team have been working here in Hue for 6 years now. It was difficult at first, he says, being here for such a long time. It was hard getting used to the climate and to the noisy, crowded Vietnamese city. But gradually, Dirk says, they've come to feel at home here. The constant rainstorms are another thing that's difficult to get used to. It might also explain why this beautiful mausoleum complex is not overrun with tourists. The Emperor Tu Duc was known as a bit of an aesthete who was more interested in art than in the business of government. He had this mausoleum built during his lifetime, in the mid-1800s, as his final resting place and as a place of contemplation. Andrea shows me Tu Duc's tea house, a favorite motif of postcards, thanks to the natural beauty of the lakeside pavilion. The gate at the entrance to the mausoleum could soon be adorning picture postcards too. But before that, there's still a lot of work to be done. Dirk explains that much of the communication goes on via body language, especially when they can't rely on English. But Andrea chips in, Dirk can actually speak some Vietnamese. Most of the young trainee restorers were recruited from the art college in Hue. Tan tells me he's been involved in the project for 5 years, and he's really become interested in preserving Vietnam's cultural heritage. He says he's noticed that people have become more interested in hearing about his work over that time too, and he likes that. The next morning, Dirk Burma picks me up on the typical means of transport here in Vietnam. It's raining, for a change, but no one here seems to mind. We're headed for An Dinh Palace, built between 1916 and 1918. It was built as a summer palace for Vietnam's second-to-last emperor, Khai Dinh, who was known for his extravagance. Dirk shows me a mural depicting Tu Duc's mausoleum. It's one of the 6 murals that he helped restore here in the palace vestibule when he was working with 5 other German restorers here in 2003. Khai Dinh was a well-known Francophile. He made a visit to France in 1922 and was the first Vietnamese ruler to do so. Dirk meets some French tourists who are interested to hear about the restoration work.
2 years. You? 2 German restorers and 13 Vietnamese artists.
Yes, 2 years and 2 years.
And now we stopped the project.
Oh, why?
Why? No. Because limited money from German government.
Yes.
As we leave, there's a rare break in the rain. We return to Tu Duc's mausoleum, and Dirk shows me the great skill his Vietnamese protégés have developed. Andrea says she loves watching the way they work and admires their confident handiwork.
Und sehr sicher und
Dirk says this restorer has such a light touch, much lighter than Dirk himself. A little later, we hear that another member of the team, Phúc, has just become a father. Andrea explains Phúc will be celebrating the birth of his second child with a good drink. Dirk says Phúc isn't even planning to visit his wife in the hospital because now's the time for nhau. And Andrea tells me nhau is the Vietnamese word for getting really smashed. And we don't want to miss that. So work stops a little earlier today, as it's time for the nhau. That means time to start pouring the drinks, and what else? Rain starts pouring again, too. I'm getting used to the moped rides in the rain, even in Hue's rush hour traffic. Somewhere en route, Phúc decides he does want to visit his newborn son in the hospital. So we go to his house to start the party without him. His 2-year-old daughter is there to greet us. I'm interested in the cost of restoring Tu Duc's gate. Andrea tells me the project budget is about 100,000 euros. And so they have to become very skilled at keeping costs down during their work. As the baby party runs late into the night, I realize this project has resulted in important work, but also international friendships.